On February 9th, 1864, within the confines of Libby Prison, a Confederate stronghold in Richmond, Virginia, more than 100 Union officers braced themselves for the unimaginable. They were undernourished, frail, and enduring living conditions that could crush even the hardest of men. However, for the previous 17 nights, they had been crafting an invention that would alter the course of events, a secret passageway concealed beneath the prison floors. This wasn't merely a daring escape attempt, it was a personal gamble with their lives. Here is the story of the greatest mass prison escape in American history. Before we get to the big escape, let's understand how they got there in the first place. They carved their way toward freedom, with nothing but crude tools and sheer determination, risking discovery and execution at every turn. Now that the clock was ticking and the temperature was dropping below freezing, it was time to act. The American Civil War, which began in 1775 and ended in 1865, was one of the deadliest conflicts in U.S. history, killing more than 600,000 people. But the war's impact went far beyond the battlefield. Inadequacy in medical care and sanitation contributed to the epidemic that gripped the Army. As the conflict continued, the number of prisoners of war also rose sharply, eventually leading to. The fighting was intense, and both sides had logistical challenges in managing captured soldiers. One such facility, the Libby Prison in the Confederate capital of, was known for its overcrowding and unsanitary conditions. By the end of the conflict, an estimated 400,000 Union and Confederate soldiers were held as prisoners of war across various facilities. Before it became infamous as a prison for Union soldiers, Richmond, Virginia's Libby Prison, had a long and storied history as a tobacco warehouse. Architect Alexander Paris designed the complex, and John Enders oversaw its operation. When the Civil War broke out, the Confederate government seized the prison in March 1860 to house the increasing number of captured Union officers. Transformed from a commercial enterprise into a military prison, the prison complex underwent a dramatic change in its use and reputation. Occupying a whole city block, the three interconnected buildings formed a massive structure. The prison's strategic location made control easier than surveillance of inmates. The first floor housed the officers of the Confederate Guards, while the upper floors housed the prisoners. Built with an impressive facade, Libby Prison was originally intended to house a small number of officers, but by the end of 1863, the population had exploded to more than 1,000, and the inmates were subjected to harsh treatment and overcrowding. Other prisons, like Bell on the James River, were often used for enlisted men. Inmates slept on bare wooden floors in spoon formation to conserve heat, often turning over on command to relieve their aching bodies. Food shortages were rampant, with rations consisting of meager portions of cornbread, rancid bacon, and buck-grid soup. Illnesses like diarrhea and dysentery spread rapidly in such cramped quarters due to the lack of proper nutrition. It is estimated that 5 prisoners died daily at Libby Prison due to typhoid pneumonia and other illnesses. To put that in perspective, over 1,000 prisoners died during the Civil War. Reports from former inmates describe the air inside the prison as fetid and suffocating, creating an environment where despair flourishes. Personal accounts from those who endured Libby Prison provide harrowing insights into their experiences. The conditions were described by a former inmate as an aeon of agony, reflecting on the psychological toll that confinement had on them. Another inmate echoed similar sentiments, drawing a comparison between their suffering and being trapped in an inferno where hope appeared but ultimately vanished. This set the stage for one of the most extraordinary prison escapes in history. However, every story requires a hero, someone who possesses courage and resilience and can provide a path for themselves and others. Colonel Thomas Rose, a member of the 77th Pennsylvania Infantry, became a pivotal figure in the Libby prison escape narrative, despite having been a schoolteacher before joining the Union Army at the beginning of the Civil War. Rose's leadership and courage allowed him to rise rapidly through the ranks, and he stood out during numerous pivotal engagements, such as the anti-IDM campaign. While fighting at Gettysburg and other locations, his luck changed dramatically at the Battle of Chaga in September 1863. His regiment was overwhelmed by Confederate forces, leading to heavy casualties in this chaotic battle. Rose was captured and sent to Libby Prison, where he would experience some of the worst conditions of the war. Upon arrival at Libby, the overcrowded Ed, being a witness to the suffering of his fellow officers, along with the cell's inadequate food supplies and rampant disease, painted a grim picture of life behind bars. He could not accept being confined in such deplorable conditions and felt a deep sense of responsibility to return to his regiment and continue fighting for the Union cause. He knew that the only way to get his freedom back was to escape, so he did not hesitate. Led him to explore various avenues for freedom. At first, he tried to organize a prison revolt, thinking that if the inmates worked together, they could overwhelm the guards and escape. However, this plan failed, because the inmates lacked support and were afraid. The psychological toll of captivity had left many feeling defeated, so it was hard for Rose to rally them. Undeterred, Rose turned to more practical means of achieving freedom. He started working with Major Ag J. Hamilton, another officer who shared his desire for freedom, and they came up with plans to escape. Hamilton had been captured at Chaga and had military experience and a good head for strategy. They made plans to sneak past guards and find other ways out of prison, but their first attempts were risky and failed. On one occasion, Rose tried to sneak out through a basement window, but a guard caught him in the act just as he was about to make his move. Their determination grew stronger with each failed attempt. They knew time was of the essence, as rumors spread about possible prisoner transfers to other facilities farther south. Realizing they needed a more long-term solution, Rose and Hamilton zeroed in on tunneling as their principal escape route. Their initial 2 attempts involved excavating in areas that were either too obvious or too difficult to hide, so they saw the need for a more strategic location to evade the guards. They needed to find a hidden spot far from the guards' view, and they needed a large enough area to conceal the dirt and debris from their digging. Looking for a suitable spot, they settled on the rundown section of the prison called Rat Hill. Had been mostly disregarded by both the inmates and the guards, this unattractive area stuffed with rats and straw presented a one-of-a-kind chance for hiding, the perfect spot to dig a tunnel undetected. Rattel was a dim, damp corner of the basement where the ruins of a kitchen lay. The floor was covered in straw, which was a blessing and a curse. It kept the cold out and provided a way to hide. The prisoners skillfully used the straw to conceal their digging activities. They created deep openings in the straw and packed loose soil from their tunnel into them, creating an unpleasant atmosphere filled with the stench of decay and the constant scurrying of rats. Guards rarely ventured into this area because of its uninviting nature, so it served as an ideal cover for their escape plan. Excavation into these spaces was done in such a way as to conceal their work, allowing them to dig without being immediately discovered. This was because few wandering sentries would dare to investigate such a repulsive area. However, they faced a challenge in digging a tunnel without any tools. The prisoners worked tirelessly, using spoons, knives, and pieces of broken wood as makeshift tools, all driven by an unyielding determination to escape. During the night, when guards were less vigilant, they worked tirelessly to remove a stove from the first floor, gain access to Rat Hill, and chip away at the mortar between the bricks to create a passageway leading outside. As the plan to tunnel out of Libby Prison took shape, Colonel Thomas E. Rose carefully selected a group of trusted fellow inmates and put them in charge of the operation officers who possessed the same resoluteness and bravery as him. This squad was made up of men who had proven themselves to be resourceful and dedicated to the cause. The team coordinated their work so that they could tunnel under the cover of night. Each shift had 5 men who rotated in and out to keep the operation secret. This methodical approach not only, in addition to improving their efficiency, the prisoners developed a strong sense of camaraderie through sharing stories and providing each other with encouragement. This bond strengthened their resolve as they dug deeper into the earth, overcoming numerous obstacles, such as flooding from nearby sewers, which occasionally filled their workspace with water, and a lack of oxygen in their cramped quarters. The tunnel measured about 50 to 80 feet in length and could be as narrow as 16 inches wide at times. Rose had a panic attack while they were digging because he became stuck in a particularly narrow section of the tunnel. The darkness engulfed him, and he could hear the faint squeaks of rats nearby. There was nowhere for him to go, and the air was often thick with dust and suffocating odors, making every breath a challenge. Fearing suffocation or eternal imprisonment in that black abyss, he mustered the strength of will to escape and resume his work alongside his fellow prisoners night after night. However, setbacks were inevitable. Flooding caused sections of their tunnel to collapse, and they had to start over in other instances due to accidental cave-ins or overly steep digging. The Union officers at Libby Prison reached a major milestone in their escape plan on the 17th day. After 17 days of hard digging, they constructed a tunnel that emerged in a vacant lot adjacent to Carr's warehouse, just short of the prison walls. This strategic location would prove to be the key to their success. Rose and Hamilton's group were instrumental in this breakthrough. Perform an essential function in their pursuit of freedom. Even though the tunnel had not yet emerged from the prison entirely, Rose determined that it would suffice if they were discreet enough, so this exit point was meticulously selected for its closeness to the prison and its ability to offer a discreet escape route. The tunnel, which spanned about 50 to 60 feet, was intended to lead directly from the heart of Libby Prison to the outside world, emerging beneath because they could blend in with their environment and walk out through the gate without raising suspicion among the guards. The escapees were able to evade immediate detection as they made their way out into the streets of Richmond. The Libby guards were led to believe that the prison was escape-proof, which led to a false sense of security. And less, since this prison camp was more vigilant than others, the escapees had a better chance of escaping undetected. This was a major factor in their successful escape, because it gave them space from the prison and allowed them to move freely through Richmond without being immediately pursued. Rose was the one who dug the last few feet of the tunnel and emerged, and he could have run for freedom. The hills, but Rose's conscience told her not to abandon his fellow inmates. Their pain was equal to his own, so he returned. However, the inmates could not afford to waste any more time. They needed to take action immediately. So, Rose Hamilton and the others decided to spend one night at the prison, plot their treacherous escape, and then act. As the sun went down on February 9, 1864, the temperature plummeted to a bone-chilling 30 degrees Fahrenheit, heightening the sense of urgency among the Union officers at Liberty Prison. The team discussed and ultimately decided to send men into the tunnel in groups of 15, a move meant to guarantee a successful escape. Consistent and rapid egress with little opportunity for discovery began not long after 10 o'clock in the evening. Following 5.5 hours of darkness, a constant flow of baggermen emerged from the tunnel, leaving the narrow corridor and onto the empty lot next to Carr's warehouse. The technique of departure was simple but needed precision. After crawling through the escape routes, surfaced beneath a tobacco shed on the grounds of Carr's warehouse. Once outside, they had to sneak through Richmond undetected by civilians and Confederate guards. The officer ERS moved stealthily and carefully during this phase, knowing that making a sound could ruin their chances of success. The first groups gathered inside the wall yard of Carr's warehouse before, as they made their way to the front gate. Their plan hinged on assimilation into the surrounding population, pretending to be ordinary citizens rather than fugitives. Colonel Thomas E. Rose was a pivotal figure in the operation's leadership, emerging from the tunnel ahead of schedule and immediately guiding his fellow officers to safety. As they prepared to leave through the main gate, the group felt a renewed sense of purpose. As they made their way into Richmond's streets, several evacuees had close encounters with Confederate soldiers. Some recounted near misses where they narrowly evaded detection by guards stationed nearby. By around 3:30 in the morning, they had arrived in the city. After everyone had left, they decided to reblock. Along with 109 men, including 21 majors and colonels, 35 captains, and 53 lieutenants, this diverse group represented a substantial portion of the Union officer corps held captive at Libby Prison. As they emerged from their underground passage, they promptly covered their escape route to prevent any discovery. At this point, neither the guards nor any other Richmond authorities had learned of the escape. Following brief discussions about their escape strategies, the Confederate guards dispersed into smaller groups. Some headed for the countryside, while others stayed in Richmond, hoping for help from local sympathizers. As word of the Libby Prison Break spread, confusion ensued among the guards. The first sign that something was amiss occurred during the morning roll call on February 10th.